Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here are the headlines. Rescuers searching for 50 people missing after mine collapsed in China. Meanwhile, China's top diplomat is in Russia, where he says relations between Beijing and Moscow cannot be influenced by other countries. Plus, fierce winter storm making its way through several states in the United States. The World Today starts now. And we begin in China, where search and rescue is underway for at least 50 people still missing after a mine collapse in the Inner Mongolia region. More than 200 rescue workers have been dispatched to the scene of the incident in Alza League, and one person has been pulled out alive so far. The mine collapsed at 5:13 local time. Mines in Inner Mongolia are some of China's top coal producers. Accidents are not uncommon in China, where the industry's safety regulations can be poorly enforced, according to analysts. But in December 2022, 23 miners died after carbon monoxide leak at a coal mine. In January 2021, 10 miners were killed in a blast at a gold mine in Shandong province. Over in France, a high school student is reported to have stabbed a teacher to death in the town of Saint-Jean-le-Luz. The government says the attacker was a 16-year-old who attended St. Thomas d'Aquin school, where he was arrested. The teacher, who was in her 50s, died of cardiac arrest after emergency services arrived at the school. She'd been teaching a Spanish class at the time of the attack. Local media reported the student may have been suffering from mental health issues. It said at this stage of the investigation, there was no suggestion the incident was terror-related. The government says it will support educators across the country in the wake of the incident. And in the West Bank, Palestinians pulled out bodies of 2 gunmen who were killed, along with 7 others, during an Israeli raid today. The Israeli troops killed 9 Palestinians, including at least 2 gunmen and 3 civilians. It also wounded around 70 others during a raid on a flashpoint city, according to witnesses. The Israeli army confirmed carrying out an operation in Nablus, but did not immediately provide further details. Islamic Jihad militant faction said 2 of its Nablus commanders had been encircled in a house by Israeli troops, triggering a clash that drew in other gunmen. Explosions sounded and local youths pelted armored troop transports with rocks. Medical officials say the 2 Islamic Jihad commanders were killed. The other 7 fatalities included at least 3 civilians, among them a 72-year-old man and a 14-year-old boy. Some 70 Palestinians were wounded. Nablus and nearby Jenin have been a focus of raids that Israel has intensified over the last year, following a spate of lethal Palestinian street attacks in its cities. So other stories now. U.S. residents who live in East Palestine, Ohio, are concerned about their health after a train derailment earlier this month caused the environmental impact. The U.S. government has ordered rail operator Norfolk Southern to handle the cleanup of all the contaminated areas as a result of the train derailment in Ohio. Norfolk Southern representatives will attend all public meetings with local residents. The train tracks run right through the heart of East Palestine. Authorities say the air and drinking water is now safe. However, many wonder if they will suffer from future health problems. Some locals say they're suffering from breathing problems, headaches, rashes, and other ailments. Diana Smith lives along the rail line, less than a kilometer from the site of the Norfolk Southern derailment that sent toxic chemicals into the air, ground, and water. Trains pass through dozens of times a day. I do apologize for the wrong video for that story. Now, Seattle has become the first U.S. city to outlaw caste discrimination after its local council voted to add caste to the city's anti-discrimination laws. A move addresses an issue important to the area's South Asian diaspora, particularly the Indian and Hindu communities. India's caste system is among the world's oldest forms of rigid social stratification. The caste system dates back thousands of years and allows many privileges to upper castes, but represses lower castes. The Dalit community is on the lowest rung of the Indian Hindu caste system and have been treated as untouchables. Caste discrimination was outlawed in India over 70 years ago, yet bias persists, according to several studies in recent years, including one that found people from lower castes were underrepresented in higher-paying jobs. Even though India has banned untouchability, Dalits still face widespread abuse across the country, where their attempts at upward social mobility have at times been violently pulled down. Debates over the caste system's hierarchy is contentious in India and abroad, with the issue intertwined with religion. Some people say discrimination is now rare. The Indian government policies reserving seats for lower caste students at top Indian universities have helped many land tech jobs in the West in recent years. Widespread disruption is expected as a fierce winter storm begins to make its way through several parts of the United States. Blizzard conditions across the Dakotas, Minnesota, and Wisconsin have forced many schools and businesses to close. Wind gusts potentially reaching 50 miles per hour and a wind chill as low as negative 45 degrees centigrade, Celsius, in some parts are predicted, while about 75 million people in 29 states are under winter weather alerts. Parts of the eastern U.S. are forecast to experience record high temperatures. In northern states, forecasts of up to 2 feet of snow in some parts could mean areas endure the biggest snowfalls for 30 years. According to FlightWare data, there have been over 1,000 flight cancellations within to or from the United States, as said this morning. Meanwhile, typically sunny and warm Los Angeles, California will see major snow and winds up to 75 miles per hour in the mountains and foothills of Ventura and Los Angeles County. Well, the United said at least 4 people, have died after a tropical cyclone battered Madagascar's east coast with heavy rain and powerful winds tearing roofs off houses and triggering a rainstorm surge. Cyclone Freddy made landfall on Tuesday, weeks after another tropical storm killed 33 people and left thousands without shelter. Schools have been shut. Traffic has been suspended in 10 regions. Much earlier, Cyclone Freddy caused some damage in Mauritius, flooding beachside hotels. The head of Madagascar's National Office of Risk and Disaster Management told media that negligence was to blame for the deaths. The Indian Ocean island nation of Madagascar is particularly vulnerable to cyclones. It is hit by an average of 1.5 cyclones every year, highest rate in Africa, according to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. The cyclone slightly weakened once it made landfall on Madagascar, with wind gusts exceeding 130 kilometers per hour. According to the meteorological services, they warned torrential rains would continue along its path. The United Nations is preparing to mobilize a record $2.25 billion this year to address the mass displacement of people in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo following a major offensive by M23 rebels last year. Decades of militia violence in Congo's vast mineral-rich east worsened last year after the Tutsi-led M23 staged a major comeback in North Kivu in March, uprooting more than 600,000 people. It's added to hordes of others displaced across East Congo over the years. In a statement, the UN said before ceremony in the capital Kinshasa, the $2.25 billion would be required to resolve the crisis. The UN representative said the DRC has 5.7 million internally displaced people, the largest number on the African continent. A British-born woman who went to Syria as a schoolgirl to join Islamic State has lost her latest appeal against the UK government's decision to take away her citizenship. Shamima Begum left London in 2015 at the age of 15 and travelled with 2 school friends to Syria, where she married an IS fighter and gave birth to 3 children, all of whom died as infants. She was stripped of her British citizenship on national security grounds in 2019, shortly after she was found in a detention camp in Syria. Now at the age of 23, she challenged that decision at a hearing in London in November when her lawyers argued that Britain's Interior Ministry, the Home Office, failed to investigate whether she was a child victim of trafficking. Her lawyers also argued that the then Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, had predetermined that Begum's British citizenship should be revoked before he received any evidence from officials. But lawyers representing the Home Office said Begum's case was about national security rather than trafficking, arguing that Begum had aligned with IS and stayed in Syria for 4 years until 2019. Well, staying in the United Kingdom, the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak told Parliament today any agreement between Britain and the European Union on Northern Ireland's border needs to ensure sovereignty, safeguard the province's place in the United Kingdom and ease trade problems. Mr. Rishi Sunak said, of course, Parliament would express its view in response to a question from the opposition Labour Party's leader, Keir Starmer, and whether Parliament will get a vote on any potential deal. After the leader of Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party, Geoffrey Donaldson, asked if Britain would seek to address issues with the trade rules known as the Northern Ireland Protocol by rewriting the Brexit treaty text, Sunak said that he had heard Donaldson's concerns loud and clear. The exchange came as Britain and the EU edged closer to resolving their dispute over the Northern Ireland Protocol, which sets out the conditions for post-Brexit trade with the British province to avoid creating a hard border with EU, Ireland, and to help protect the bloc's single market.
We are still in intensive discussions with the European Union to ensure that we can find agreement that meets the test that I set, and that is sovereignty for Northern Ireland. It's Northern Ireland's place in our precious union, and it is to find practical solutions to the problems faced by people and businesses. I have spent time engaging and listening to those communities in Northern Ireland, businesses and political parties. I have a good understanding of what is required, and I will keep fighting until we get it.
Can the Prime Minister confirm that whatever deal he brings back, this House will get a vote on it?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, of course, Parliament will express its view.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Prime Minister for his efforts in relation to the Northern Ireland Protocol. It is unacceptable that Northern Ireland has been put in this place with a protocol imposed upon us that harms our place in the United Kingdom. It must be replaced with arrangements that are acceptable and restore our place in the United Kingdom and its internal market. Does the Prime Minister accept how important the constitutional and democratic issues are in relation to getting a solution? And will he agree with me that it is unacceptable that EU laws are imposed on Northern Ireland with no democratic scrutiny or consent? And will he assure me that he will address these fundamental constitutional issues and do so not just by tweaking the protocol, but by rewriting the legally binding treaty text?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for his question, but also thank him for the role that he has played in recent months in articulating unionist concerns. I have heard loud and clear when he says he wants and needs these issues resolved so that he has a basis to work with others to restore power sharing, and I know that that is genuine. He raised a question of practical issues, and it is vital that these are addressed. But he also raises, Mr. Speaker, a vital question about the constitutional and legal framework in which these arrangements exist. And I can assure him that I agree. Addressing the democratic deficit is an essential part of the negotiations that remain ongoing with the European Union. And just as he has been consistent, so have I. And I can assure him that this is at the very heart of the issues that must be addressed.
Welcome back. You're still watching The World Today. Turkey and Syria need more humanitarian aid and access to healthcare. So says United Nations. Geda El-Tahir Mudawi is the Deputy Director from the UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. She says people urgently need access to shelter, drinking water and cash. 6 people were killed in the latest earthquake that struck the border region of Turkey and Syria. According to authorities, it came 2 weeks after a massive earthquake killed more than 47,000 people and damaged or destroyed hundreds of thousands of homes. Monday's quake, which struck just as rescue work from the initial devastating quake was winding down, was centered near the Turkish city of Antakya and was felt in Syria, Egypt, and in Lebanon. The magnitude of the quake was measured at 6.3 by the US and European seismological agencies and at 6.4 by Turkish monitors. was followed by 90 aftershocks. Turkey's disaster agency informed much later, saying fresh trauma to Antakya residents left homeless and living in tents by the magnitude 7.8 quake on February 6. More than 47,000 people, as we said, were killed in the initial quake that happened last week. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is on a two-day visit to Athens. He's met with Greek emergency rescue workers, applauding them for their work in the deadly earthquake that struck in Turkey. He arrived in Greece from Turkey, where he toured the earthquake zone and pledged more financial assistance by Washington for the plagued regions. He met Greece's EMAC disaster response teams, who participated in rescue operations in Hatay in southeastern Turkey. Blinken also toured the Asian Agora of Athens with the country's culture minister, Lina Mendoni, and the director of American School of Classical Studies in Greece's Bona Westcott. He also inaugurated a new wing at the U.S. Embassy in the Greek capital. Blinken arrived in the Greek capital on Monday. During his visit, he met with Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis and his counterpart Nikos Dendias, as well as the leader of the country's opposition. There really isn't nothing left of many of the hospitals in the regions which were affected by the quake in Syria, in northern Syria, after the deadly quake hits. One facility in particular, known as the Al-Dana Hospital, is no longer operational. The words unsafe and unfit for work have been painted in red next to the entrance. Medics are saying the quake is a new blow to the health services already battered by more than a decade of war in the country. Many of the reporters on the ground have met with members of other hospitals nearby. They have also endured horrific incidents as well. To France now, where a third person has been cured of HIV, and it's all thanks to a bone marrow stem cells transplant, according to the French Pasteur Institute. The institute says the patient was probably cured as more than 5 years after he received the transplant from a donor with a rare genetic mutation that resists HIV infection, and 44 months after he came off antiretroviral drugs tests, which showed no trace of the man's previous infection. The unnamed man living with HIV received the bone marrow stem cells as part of a treatment he was undergoing against leukemia in Düsseldorf. Potential surviving infected stem cells find themselves unable to infect others with the virus. It's thanks to the donor's naturally HIV-resistant cells. With a previous case in 2007, dubbed the Berlin patients, and another in 2016, the London patients, and the Düsseldorf patient comes as a third case of HIV cure by bone marrow transplant worldwide. Well, the recipient says he feels fortunate and very happy to share this news with other people as well. Although the procedure is complex, it's also expensive and risky, the recipient says it's a positive, the institution says it's a positive step in the search for a cure to HIV, with one potential solution being the introduction of the HIV-resistant gene mutation in patients without resorting to bone marrow transplants. So, our final story today. If you're finding it difficult to move on from your ex and your past relationships, or want to express how you feel about your ex, there's some odd ways you can go about it. One of them is ideas provided by the zoos in Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania. It allows you to name a bug after a former partner just for $5. The zoo then feeds the bug to the animals, helping you in getting over your past relationship. Lehigh Zoo advertised the offer on their Twitter page for this Valentine's Day and wrote in the poster, "Name a bug after your ex and we'll feed it to one of our animal ambassadors." Advertisement further described the people that make a donation of $5 to name a cricket, which will be later served to an animal. That's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.